Sailing through the Mediterranean en route to Greece, we drop anchor for a brief visit at Malta, a small island with a colossal record in the pages of military history. In fact, Malta has always been associated with warfare, but special mention is made of its connection with the crusading knights of St. John, who were driven off the island of Rhodes by the Turks in 1530 and re-established here as the Knights of Malta. These gigantic walls which surround the capital city of Valletta were considered impregnable until the advent of modern warfare, as poor old Malta learned during the recent World War. Before Italy surrendered in 1943, about 3 out of every 4 houses in Valletta were demolished or damaged. Today, Valletta is a quiet and peaceful little town, aside from the playful antics of curious children. A strong Italian strain runs through the native people, who speak a language that sounds like a mixture of Italian and English. Nevertheless, Italian manners and customs seem to dominate their mode of living. Malta was annexed to Great Britain in 1814 and has been a base for the British fleet ever since. The civil population is now about 330,000, and insofar as the population density has been established at 2,593 persons per square mile, there is naturally considerable immigration, especially to Australia. Valletta is literally a stone fortress, and it is only natural that stone cutting and carving should be a popular trade. In view of the fact that we will be seeing stone columns and ruins galore during our journey through glorious Greece, it is fitting to see how the ancient stone carvers may have fashioned the material for their monuments. As we sail out of the beautiful harbor of Malta, we reflect again upon the blood-curdling battles that were fought here for the varying causes which at the time were considered all important to the forces of combat. But now the fires of warfare have been snuffed out forever. Ironically, our final scene of this so-called island fortress is a comforting symbol of peace, silently reflecting its image in water that once ran red with human blood. And it is with this thought that we continue our journey to Rhodes, one of the most famous among the Dodecanese islands of glorious Greece. The historic harbor of Rhodes reminds us that here was the setting for the famous Colossus of Rhodes, regarded as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. It was an enormous bronze statue of the sun god Helios. It stood over 100 feet high at the entrance to the harbor, with its legs parted wide enough for ships to pass under it. This ancient wonder was knocked down by an earthquake in 224 BC. Then, after lying broken in the harbor for almost 1,000 years, the pieces were bought by a Jewish merchant from the Saracens and probably reconstructed into instruments of war. As far back as the 10th century BC, Rhodes was an island of prosperous towns. Her ships were navigating the high seas, and Rhodian colonies were springing up all along the Mediterranean seaboard. When the Byzantine Empire reached the zenith of its power, Rhodes became one of its principal maritime provinces. In 1309, the Knights of St. John of Jerusalem captured the island, occupying it for more than 200 years. They built picturesque fortifications round the town, together with other architectural feats preserved to this day. From 1912 to 1945, the island was occupied by the Italians. It wasn't until March 1947 that Rhodes and the rest of the Dodecanese Islands reverted once again to Greece. Although the Greek Orthodox Church fosters the chief religion in Rhodes, all faiths are tolerated, including a silent reminder of former Turkish rule, when the Muslim mosques were dominant. On the outskirts of Rhodes, there is a thermal region that attracted the attention of Benito Mussolini. He undertook to have this former Greek watering spa cleaned and redecorated for his personal enjoyment. He also made plans for his peaceful retirement in the atmosphere of Rhodes, and the quarters he chose for this final event were none other than the castle of the Knights of St. John. This renowned fortress dates back to the days of the Crusaders. But Mussolini was a modern crusader who never enjoyed the hospitality of this ancient abode. He had it refurnished and fully equipped with modern plumbing, electric lights, and all the comforts of his day, but he never lived to fulfill his dream, for such is the destiny of dictators. In the days when Athens was a maritime power, the harbor of Rhodes was an important rendezvous for the Athenian navy. Although very little remains in Rhodes that could be associated with the early Greek settlers, an occasional ruin rises from its precious soil in silent testimony to the glory that was Greece. While driving along the road to Delphi, which is situated about 100 miles from Athens, we recall that part of classical Greek history which begins with Mount Parnassus, the abode of Apollo, high god of the ancient Greeks. At old Delphi, beneath Mount Parnassus, just beyond this landscape, the ancient Greeks placed their most important sanctuary, known as the Oracle of Pythian Apollo. Along the way, we are attracted by scenes of roadside life that have not been affected by the transitions of time. This old woman claimed to be over 100 years of age, and she was still capable of performing useful family chores, one of the most important of which appears to be making yarn from wool with this primitive device. Through our interpreter, we asked her to what she attributed her good health and longevity. Without hesitation, she answered, faith in God, hard work, and fresh goat milk. Unlike many countries we have visited, the peasant woman is permitted to ride, while her husband gallantly strides along beside her with a walking stick for swagger. After passing through several quaint little towns, we finally arrive at Delphi, former center of the glory that was Greece. The famous temple of Apollo, which once stood near here, was protected by this towering mountain, and it is said that the prophetic voice of the renowned Delphi oracle still echoes at times from its foreboding heights. And here's what is left of the Temple of Athena, which is regarded as one of the most gigantic, classic examples of ancient Greek architecture. On the so-called Sacred Way stands a somewhat unpretentious little edifice. It is a restored treasure house of the ancient Athenians. We found the peasant women who now nonchalantly lead their horses among these immortal ruins to be a very friendly people, greeting us with modest smiles. For the benefit of those who may have forgotten a little of what they read in their school books, the Delphi oracle was a woman who was consulted on important questions of her day. The questions asked of her were usually written down, and the oracle was seldom seen. It is believed by some authorities or scholars that her answers may have been prompted by a coterie of priests who surrounded her. Nevertheless, they must have been wise men, as the oracle became world famous through her profound utterances, which often served a practical purpose and helped to bring about unity among the Greek states, which may have been a forerunner of our present-day democracies. Continuing our journey along the road to Corinth, colorful Christian churches present an interesting contrast with the ruined temples of the Greek gods, and little roadside shrines attract the attention of a young lady who looks very familiar to us. Among the Christian landmarks of Greece, this ruined city of old Corinth commemorates the locale in which St. Paul delivered his immortal epistles to the Corinthians. Corinth, largest city of ancient Greece, founded in 900 BC. More than 1 million people once populated this vast hillside area, stretching down to the sea. In our troubled world, it is fitting that we should turn back the pages of history to ancient Athens, the mother of democracy, where we may still draw inspiration from the institutions that flourished when Athens was the world beacon light of freedom. Here once lived Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and countless other teachers of humanity, from whom freedom-loving peoples have inherited most of their noblest qualities. In recent years, the Greeks have had their full measure of war and confusion, but their spirit, which reaches deeply into the wells of freedom, appears to be stronger than ever. Athens, the capital city with its 2 million inhabitants, is the hub around which revolves the destiny of Greece. Perhaps the most famous citadel in the history of mankind is the Acropolis, overlooking the city of Athens. The most attractive building on the Acropolis is the Parthenon, which has passed through the vicissitudes of time with undying glory. Nothing has been said or written about the ancient Greeks that could possibly excel the beauty and grandeur of their architecture, which even in ruins is a silent tribute to their culture. This is all that remains of the magnificent temple of the Olympian Zeus, high god of the ancient Greeks. Although many of its public buildings have been erected in recent years, most of them are exact duplicates of the ones that were built in the golden age of Pericles, about 5 centuries before Christ. And this indeed is a grand tribute to the builders of ancient Greece, whose classical architecture is still regarded as the most beautiful yet designed by man. In conclusion, we salute the people of Greece, if for no other reason than the fact that it was from their ancient philosophers and institutions that we inherited our ideas of freedom and philosophy, as well as our appreciation for art and culture in their noblest proportions.